So we built a strong company. We built a company that even in a tough year like 2008 will generate $185 billion in earnings and $20 billion of profit. One of 6 AAA rated companies in the world. A strong, vibrant company with a great motivated team, with a sense of safety and protect the future. And I think by doing those two things, I'm being an ethical leader in this environment. But that's not enough. It's just not enough, because I think we're also, as GE, and I'm also personally a part of a bigger structure called the broad economy, called the world, called what's this whole system going to look like coming out of this turbulence that we've seen in the last year, the last 2 months. You know, for the students, you're going to lead a beautiful life in business. In your career, let's say, I hope my career maybe goes 40 years. Let's say your business life goes for, you live a long time and you have a great long business career. There's only 2 or 3 times in 40 years when you know something's changed. 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 moments. Maybe not that many. But you'll know it when you see it. This is that time. This is that time. You know, this is a time when everybody's needed. This is a time when the world isn't going to be the same. This is a time when the past doesn't predict the future. This is a different time. And you've got to know it. You've got to be part of it. You've got to draw your own conclusions from the standpoint of what's going to be different. And you need to be a real force to make sure you're really shaping the future. This is one of those times. What do we know for sure as we sit here, not just in the United States, but globally, here in October of 2008? We know that the government will intersect with business in a meaningful way and probably a permanent way. Permanent meaning 10, 20 years. This is not going to be a quick blast and then restore to normal. And we also know that business is going to have to re-earn trust broadly. You know, if you're an hourly worker in Cincinnati, Ohio, or Columbus, Ohio, or Illinois, you have every right to be a little bit shocked right now about what you see, to be a little bit angry, and you're going to see that. And we've got to find ways to earn that trust and to earn that faith back. So, I'm an optimist by nature. You know, I could discuss this in a sense of hopelessness or sense of crisis, but I think to a certain extent it can be cathartic. And if we do the right things, not just in the United States, but if we do the right things as a company, if we do the right things more broadly, we can come through this crisis ethically and in a much better place. So what do I see as things that might have to happen? The first thing is, if we're going to get more regulation, I think business needs to work with government to make sure that that regulation is forward-looking and led by domain experts who are also accountable. You know, I would say if you just think about financial services, if we ended up after this crisis with fewer regulators but more powerful, maybe one single regulator, who was filled with real industry experts, real domain experts, that were accountable for performance, this could be a catalyst for positive change. It doesn't have to be a negative. And by the way, I would tell you, just as one business person to another, if we think the only place we're going to get more regulation is in financial services, you're nuts. We are in the midst of a dramatic change, again, not just in the U.S., but globally, where we're going to get more regulation in healthcare and energy and in many other areas. So as young business leaders, as a CEO, I'd say one of our most important jobs in the next months is to make sure we build regulatory structure that is industry focused, led by domain experts that are accountable for positive change, and that is the most constructive case we can build, and business needs to be a part of it. So that's one thing that I think could be positive as we go forward. It's not enough. I'd say the second thing, and I think about this a lot, both for GE, but also more broadly from an economic and societal standpoint, and I think it may impact some of the people in this room in terms of the careers you choose. From about 1980 till about 2007, financial service earnings went from 10% of the S&P 500 to about 45% of the S&P 500. And it was part of a central premise that big developed world economies like the US and the UK and Japan didn't need to be industrial powers. They could be service economies. And you know what? Maybe that's just wrong. Maybe what we're learning today is that that just didn't work. Just wasn't sustainable. You know, maybe it's just not right that somebody in New York City can make $20 million a year bundling mortgage loans, and a PhD in Schenectady, New York, makes $250,000 a year. $20 million on one side, $250,000 on another. And maybe that's just going to change. So I would pose to you as students, because you get some time to think about this stuff more than I do, think about how the world might change. Think about the fact that big developed economies like the UK, Japan, the United States may not be able to be these big service economies and therefore have to go back or have to go forward to being technology, industrial, productive, manufacturing-based economies. The amount we've spent in the US, UK, Japan's better, Western Europe, R&D as a percentage of sales has dropped every year for the last 25 years, industrially. That's got to change. These economies are going to have to invest more in research and development. They're going to have to be more technically based. The service economies will still be strong, but maybe just the path we were heading on as an economy wasn't sustainable and has to be replaced with a rededication to innovation, technology, productivity. And in so doing, we will get through this crisis, perhaps, in a more sustainable, more protected, more valuable place than we went into it. So I'd pose that to you as potential change number 2 that we all ought to be thinking about and maybe working on. Now, if that's the direction we go, the third thing I would say is, okay, if you're going to be more technical and if we're going to be more innovative and more productive, where should we direct our focus? And I would suggest, again, for all of our great students here at Columbia, the 3 places that should get the most attention are energy, healthcare, and education. You know, I travel the world extensively. I've been to more than 100 countries in my GE career. And there are 4 pillars of every competitive society that I see. It's education, it's healthcare, it's energy, and it's financial systems that promote growth. I've already talked a little bit about the financial system, but I think this new generation of focus on technology and innovation really can make a difference in energy, healthcare, education. Energy first. We can make a clean energy future. This is an extremely solvable problem. Most of the technology is on the shelf today. There's been a pitiful amount that's spent in energy technology over the past 25 or 30 years. Even if the price of oil is considered low today at around $70 or $75 a barrel, maybe half what it was 2 months ago, it's still 4 times higher than it was the previous 25 years. So the need to create this clean energy future, I think, is both a social imperative as well as an economic windfall for the people that figure out how to do it. And in my mind, should be job 1 of the next administration because it's so highly solvable.